Dr. Tail Voss pressed his blue-scaled hand against the observation window and watched the human children with growing worry. The Zentorian scientist had studied many species during his 20 years at Galactic Academy Station Omega-7, but humans still confused him. Below in the recreation area, 12-year-old Ji-won Park ran across the field while other human children chased her. She held a bright red flag in her hand and moved fast between metal barriers and fake trees. Her teammates shouted directions to her from different spots around the area. "Move left, Ji-won. Do-hyun is coming from your right. Watch out for the tower. Hanul is hiding there." Tail wrote notes on his datapad. The human children called this activity "capture the flag." To him, it looked like organized warfare training. Two teams fought to steal each other's flags while protecting their own base. The children used tactics that reminded him of military operations he had studied. In another part of the recreation area, a group of younger humans played something called dodgeball. They threw soft balls at each other, trying to hit opponents while avoiding being hit themselves. When a child got hit, they had to leave the playing area. The last team standing won the game. Tail watched as 8-year-old Minho Kim caught a ball thrown at him and immediately threw it back at the opposing team. The boy moved with quick reflexes and showed good aim. His teammates cheered when he hit another child, eliminating them from the game. "This is concerning," Tail said to himself. He had never seen young beings from other species act this way during their free time. The Zentorian children spent their recreation time in quiet meditation pools, floating peacefully while their minds grew stronger. Young Croylians worked on complex puzzles that helped them develop their natural problem-solving abilities. The Valdorian youngsters practiced their singing, which was important for their telepathic communication. But human children seemed to enjoy activities that looked like combat training. Ms. Soman Lee, the human cultural liaison, noticed Tail watching from the observation deck. She walked up the stairs to join him, her footsteps echoing in the quiet corridor. "Dr. Voss, you look troubled," she said with a smile. "Is everything okay?" Tail pointed toward the recreation area where the human children continued their games. "Ms. Lee, I must ask about these activities. They seem very aggressive. Are you certain this is appropriate behavior for young beings?" Soman followed his gaze and saw Ji-won's team successfully capture the blue team's flag. The children celebrated by jumping and hugging each other. She laughed softly. "Oh, you mean recess games? These are just fun activities, Dr. Voss. Human children have played games like these for thousands of years. It helps them stay healthy and learn to work together." "But they appear to be practicing warfare," Tail said, his voice filled with concern. "Look at how they coordinate their movements. See how they use the environment to hide and attack. This child here," he pointed to Ji-hoon Lee, who was directing his team's strategy, "he is giving orders like a military commander." 10-year-old Ji-hoon stood behind a barrier, using hand signals to tell his teammates where to move. He had divided his team into two groups. One group created a distraction while the other sneaked toward the enemy flag. It was a classic military tactic called a pincer movement. Somin watched Ji-hoon's strategy unfold successfully. His team captured the flag while the other team was busy defending against the distraction. She had to admit that the boy showed impressive tactical thinking. "I understand your concern," she said carefully. "But human children naturally enjoy competition and physical activity. These games teach them important lessons about teamwork, leadership, and problem-solving. They're not learning to fight. They're learning to work together. Tail was not convinced. He had spent years studying different species, and he had never seen anything like human recreational activities. The game seemed too organized, too strategic, too much like actual military training. As they watched, the children switched to a new game called King of the Hill. The objective was simple. One team tried to control a small raised platform, while other teams tried to take it from them. The team that held the platform longest won. What worried Tail was how quickly the human children adapted their tactics. When one strategy failed, they immediately tried a different approach. They formed alliances with other teams, then broke those alliances when it helped them win. They used deception, surprise attacks, and coordinated group movements. Young-ho. Park, a 14-year-old who was visiting his younger sister, Jiwon, joined the game. He had just arrived from a military academy for a family visit. Tail watched as Young-ho quickly took control of one team and led them to victory using advanced tactics. "Your children show remarkable strategic abilities," Tail said to So-min. "This Young-ho boy, he moves like a trained soldier." So-min felt uncomfortable. She knew that Young-ho was indeed training at a military academy, but she didn't want to make the situation worse by mentioning that. "He's just good at games," she said weakly. Other alien faculty members had begun to notice the human children's behavior too. Dr. Kelvin, a Vorthak educator, approached the observation window with several colleagues. "Ms. Lee," Dr. Kelvin said, in his deep, rumbling voice, "we need to discuss these human activities. Several parents from other species have expressed concerns about the aggressive nature of human recreation time." The group of alien educators watched as the human children began a new game. This time, they divided into small groups and tried to sneak past guards to reach a target zone. The children who played guards had to catch the sneaking teams before they reached their goal. To the alien observers, it looked exactly like infiltration training. The human children moved silently, used cover effectively, and coordinated their movements with hand signals. When they were caught, they didn't cry or get upset. Instead, they immediately started planning new strategies for the next round. "This is highly unusual," said Professor Nim, a Christorian specialist in child development. "Young beings should not show such strong aggressive instincts. In our species, children who display this kind of behavior require special counseling." So-min felt overwhelmed. She tried to explain that these were normal human activities, but the alien educators seemed genuinely worried. They saw the games as evidence that human children were being trained for warfare. "Perhaps we should schedule a meeting with Headmaster Quellion," suggested Dr. Kelvin. "The Academy Council needs to address this situation before it affects other students." As the alien educators discussed their concerns, none of them noticed that some non-human children had started watching the human games with interest. A young Zentaurian named Kix had been observing from the edge of the recreation area. He found the human activities much more exciting than floating in meditation pools. When recess ended, the human children walked back to their dormitories, laughing and talking about their games. They looked happy and healthy, showing no signs of the aggressive behavior that worried the alien faculty. Jiwon Park walked past the observation window, still carrying the red flag from her last game. She looked up and waved at the adults watching. From above, her face bright with joy from playing with her friends. Tail watched her go and felt more confused than ever. The human children seemed like normal, happy youngsters, but their games looked like military training exercises. He needed to understand what was really happening during human recreation time. The mystery of human recess had begun to unfold. The Academy Council meeting room felt tense as representatives from 12 different species gathered around the crystal table. Headmaster Quellion, a tall Etherian with flowing silver robes, called the emergency session to order. "We are here to discuss concerns about human recreational activities," the headmaster announced. His voice echoed through the chamber with natural authority. "Professor Kyung-nam, as the human representative, please explain these behaviors we have observed." Professor Kyung-nam stood up slowly. He was a middle-aged human with kind eyes and graying hair. He had taught alien studies for 15 years and thought he understood how to communicate with other species. But today felt different. Today felt dangerous. "Honored colleagues," he began, "I want to assure you that human children's games are completely normal and harmless. These activities have been part of human culture for thousands of years. They help our young ones grow strong and learn important social skills." Dr. Kelvin, the Vorthak educator, made a deep rumbling sound that indicated disagreement. "Professor Nam, we have documented these activities extensively. The human children demonstrate advanced tactical knowledge, coordinated attack patterns, and systematic territorial control. These are not the behaviors of peaceful youngsters." Around the table, other alien representatives nodded in agreement. The Christorian delegate, Professor Neem, projected images onto the chamber's viewing screen. The images showed human children during various recess activities, with analysis notes highlighting their strategic movements. "Look at this footage," Professor Nim said, pointing to a scene of Capture the Flag. "The human child named Ji-won Park uses a classic pincer movement to distract defenders while her teammates approach from multiple angles. This is advanced military strategy." Professor Kyung-nam watched the footage and felt his heart sink. When viewed through alien eyes, the innocent game did look like combat training. He tried to think of a way to explain the difference between play and actual warfare. "These are games," he said firmly. "Human children enjoy competition and physical challenges. They are not learning to fight. They are learning to work together, to solve problems, and to stay healthy through exercise." "Exercise?" Dr. Tyel Voss stood up from his seat. He had prepared detailed notes for this meeting. "Professor Nam, we have observed human children engaging in activities that directly improve combat readiness. They practice throwing projectiles. Accurately, they develop quick reflexes, and they learn to move silently through hostile territory. Meanwhile, in the Academy's recreation area, the human children were proving the aliens' concerns correct without knowing it. Hanul Kim, a clever 11-year-old, had convinced several alien children to try playing hide-and-seek with the humans. "The rules are simple," Hanul explained to a group of young Zentaurians and Croylians. "One person counts to 50 while everyone else hides. Then the seeker tries to find everyone. The last person found wins and becomes the next seeker." The alien children thought this sounded easy and fun. They scattered around the recreation area to hide while Do-hyun Choi, a 12-year-old human, counted with his eyes closed. "Ready or not, here I come," Do-hyun called out when he finished counting. What happened next amazed the alien children and worried the few adult observers who were watching. Do-hyun didn't just look for the hidden children randomly. He moved systematically through the area, checking likely hiding spots in a logical pattern. He listened carefully for sounds and watched for movement. When he found someone, he didn't just tag them and move on. He used the information to predict where others might be hiding. Hanul, who was still hidden, watched Do-hyun's search pattern and realized the human boy was using advanced tracking techniques. Hanno quietly moved from his original hiding spot to stay ahead of the search, using terrain features to break his silhouette and moving only when Do-hyun was looking in other directions. The alien children, meanwhile, stayed in their original hiding spots and were found quickly. They didn't understand why they kept losing to the humans at this supposedly simple game. Young Chix, the Zentorian who had been watching human games for several days, was the first to figure out what was happening. "They're not just playing," he whispered to his friend Nex. "They're thinking like hunters." Back in the council chamber, the meeting was becoming more heated. Dr. Tail had finished presenting his observations, and other faculty members were sharing their own concerns. "My students have begun asking to participate in human games," reported Dr. Yalen, a Valdorian instructor. "They find their traditional meditation time boring compared to what they see humans doing. This is disrupting our educational methods." Professor Kyung-nam felt sweat forming on his forehead. This was going worse than he had expected. "Perhaps if our children played together, you would see that these activities promote friendship and cooperation, not aggression." "We tried that," Dr. Kelvin rumbled. "The results were disturbing. Human children naturally assume leadership roles and begin organizing the other species into tactical formations. Your youngsters seem to have an instinctive understanding of group dynamics and strategic positioning." The headmaster raised his hand for silence. "Professor Nam, help us understand. Are you saying that human children naturally develop these abilities without specific training?" "Yes, exactly," Professor Nam said, feeling hopeful. "These skills develop naturally through play. No one teaches them military tactics. They just learn by playing games." The silence that followed was not the relief Professor Nam had hoped for. Instead, the alien representatives looked even more concerned. "That's worse," Dr. Tail said quietly. "If human children develop tactical abilities naturally, without formal training, then every human child is essentially a military asset in development." In the recreation area, the hide-and-seek game had evolved into something more complex. Hanul had convinced the alien children to try a team version where groups worked together to avoid being found. The human children immediately formed efficient units with designated scouts, decoys, and escape routes. The alien children tried to copy these tactics but struggled to coordinate effectively. Their natural instincts didn't include the same pack-hunting behaviors that humans had evolved over millions of years. Do-hyun Choi found himself naturally taking charge of the search teams, organizing them into a grid pattern that systematically eliminated hiding spots. He showed the alien children how to communicate silently using hand signals and how to move without making noise. "Humans are really good at this," admitted young Zeph, a Croylian child. "How do you know where to look?" "I don't know," Do-hyun said honestly. "I just think about where I would hide if I were you, and then I look there." What Do-hyun didn't realize was that he was demonstrating advanced psychological warfare techniques. He was predicting enemy behavior and using that information to gain tactical advantages. Dr. Ariam Yun, a human behavioral scientist who worked at the academy, had been quietly observing both the council meeting and the children's games. She took careful notes on how the situation was developing. As a human, she understood that the children's activities were normal and healthy. But as a scientist, she could also see why the alien species found these behaviors alarming. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters and social predators. Their children naturally developed skills that had helped their species survive and thrive. The problem was that these same skills looked identical to military training when viewed by species that had evolved differently. The council meeting was nearing its end, and Professor Nam could see that he had failed to reassure his colleagues. The alien representatives were more worried than when the meeting had started. "We propose a temporary restriction on human recreational activities," Dr. Kelvin announced, "until we can better understand the implications of this training. Children should participate in quieter, less aggressive activities." Professor Nam felt panic rising in his chest. If human children were forced to stop playing their traditional games, it would be like asking them to stop being human. But he could also see the genuine fear in his colleagues' faces. They truly believed that human recess was creating an army of child soldiers. "I request more time to study this issue," Dr. Tail said. "Before we make any restrictions, I would like to understand exactly what these activities are teaching human children. Perhaps if we understand the purpose, we can find a compromise." The headmaster considered this request. "Very well. Dr. Voss, you have 1 week to complete your study. Professor Nam, I expect full cooperation from the human staff during this investigation." As the council members filed out of the chamber, Professor Nam remained seated, staring at the table. He had tried to explain that human games were harmless, but he had only made things worse. Now the entire academy was watching human children like they were dangerous weapons in training. Outside, Hanil Kim was teaching a group of alien children how to play a new game called King of the Hill. None of them knew that their innocent fun was about to change everything at Galactic Academy Station Omega 7. Dr. Tail Voss walked through the Academy's research library with Dr. Aram Yun, looking for answers about human behavior. The human behavioral scientist had agreed to help him understand what was really happening during human recess time. "I need to see everything," Tail said as they settled at a study table surrounded by data files. "Every record of human educational practices, every historical document about human children's activities. There must be something that explains this behavior." Ariam pulled up files on her data pad and projected them onto the table's holographic display. "Dr. Voss, I think you're approaching this the wrong way. You're looking for evidence of military training, but that's not what these games are about." "Then explain to me what I'm seeing," Tail said, showing her video recordings from the past week. "Look at this footage of human children playing war games in the forest simulation area. They use cover, they coordinate attacks, they even take prisoners." On the screen, Ji-Won Park led a team of human children through a mock battle exercise. They had divided into 2 armies and were trying to capture each other's base. The children moved like experienced soldiers using hand signals and tactical formations. "These are just games," Ariam insisted. "Human children have always played like this. It's how we learn social skills and develop physically." "But why do they play like this?" Tail asked. "Other species don't need combat games to learn social skills. Centaurian children learn cooperation through meditation. Croylian children work together on puzzles. Why do humans need to practice warfare?" Before Ariam could answer, footsteps echoed in the library corridor. Young-Ho Park, the military academy student visiting his sister, approached their table. He wore his academy uniform and carried training materials. "Excuse me," Young-Ho said politely. "I heard you were studying human games. My instructor asked me to provide some information about how childhood activities prepare students for military training." Tail and Ariam exchanged worried glances. This was exactly what the alien faculty feared hearing. "Please, sit down," Tail said. "Tell me about your experience." Young-Ho sat down and pulled out his own data pad. "When I started at the military academy, I was surprised to discover how much I already knew. All those games we played as children had taught us the basics of tactics, teamwork, and leadership." He showed them training videos from his academy. Look at this exercise. We call it building clearing. We have to work as a team to search a building and eliminate enemy targets. When I first did this, it felt just like playing hide and seek or capture the flag. Tail watched the military training video and felt his scales tingle with alarm. The movements, the coordination, the tactical thinking, it was identical to what he had observed during human recess. Are you saying that human children's games directly prepare them for military service? Tail asked. Not exactly, Young-ho said, thinking carefully. The games don't teach us to fight. They teach us to think like a team and move together. The military training builds on those skills, but the skills themselves come from playing. Ariam leaned forward. Young-ho, can you explain what made you good at military exercises that other species might struggle with? Sure, the young man said. When we played tag as kids, we learned to predict where people would run. When we played dodgeball, we learned to watch multiple targets at once and react quickly. When we played capture the flag, we learned to coordinate with teammates without being able to talk to them. Tail was writing notes frantically. These are all military skills. Maybe, Young-ho agreed. But we learned them while having fun with our friends. We weren't trying to become soldiers. We were just playing. Dr. Minji Kang, a human child psychologist, joined them at the table. She had been monitoring the conversation through the library's communication system. I think I can help explain this, Dr. Kang said as she sat down. Humans evolved as social hunters. For millions of years, human survival depended on our ability to work together to hunt large, dangerous animals. The children's games you're observing are expressions of those evolutionary adaptations. She pulled up evolutionary charts on the holographic display. Other species evolved differently. Centaurians developed advanced mental abilities for individual survival. Croylians became master problem solvers who could overcome obstacles through intelligence, but humans became persistence hunters who succeeded through teamwork and tactics. So, human children naturally play hunting games? Tail asked. Exactly, Dr. Kang said. When human children play tag, they're practicing pursuit hunting. When they play hide and seek, they're learning tracking and evasion. When they play team sports, they're learning pack coordination. Tail stared at the evolutionary data. This means that every human child is born with the instincts of a hunter. A social hunter, Ariam corrected. Humans are dangerous alone, but we're incredibly effective in groups. Our children's games teach them to function as part of a team. Meanwhile, in the Academy's main classroom building, the alien faculty were conducting their own investigation. They had separated human children from the other species and were observing how each group behaved during structured activities. The non-human children worked quietly on individual projects, occasionally helping each other when asked. They followed instructions carefully and showed no signs of aggressive behavior. The human children, however, had unconsciously organized themselves into a hierarchy. Jahoon Lee, despite being one of the younger students, had become a natural leader. Other children looked to him for guidance and followed his suggestions without being told to do so. When given a group project building a model space station, the human children immediately divided tasks based on each person's strengths. They appointed scouts to gather materials, builders to construct components, and coordinators to ensure everything fit together properly. They're self-organizing into a military unit, observed Dr. Kelvan, watching through the classroom's observation window. No adult told them to structure their group this way. Professor Neem, the Christorian child development specialist, was taking detailed notes. The human children show natural aptitude for command structures and specialized roles. This is highly unusual behavior for youngsters. Back in the library, Dr. Tail was reaching a disturbing conclusion. Dr. Yun, are you telling me that human children are essentially training themselves to be soldiers without knowing it? Not soldiers, Ariam said firmly. They're learning to be humans. The fact that these skills translate to military effectiveness is just a consequence of human evolution. Dr. Kang added more context. Other species might see this as aggressive behavior, but for humans, it's actually about protection and cooperation. Human children learn to fight together so they can defend their community. Young-ho nodded in agreement. At the academy, they taught us that human military doctrine is based on protecting others. We don't fight to conquer. We fight to defend. The games we played as children taught us to work together and look out for each other. Tail was beginning to understand, but he still felt concerned. Even if the intentions are peaceful, the result is the same. Human children develop combat skills through play. This makes them potentially dangerous to other species. Or potentially valuable, Dr. Kang said quietly. Human children don't just learn to fight. They learn to protect. They learn to sacrifice themselves for their team. They learn to include others and make everyone stronger. As if to demonstrate her point, a commotion outside the library caught their attention. Through the window, they could see Hanul Kim and Do-hyun Choi in the recreation area, teaching a group of alien children how to play a modified version of Capture the Flag. The human children had changed the rules so that instead of defeating the other team, both teams had to work together to capture flags from automated defense systems. The alien children, who had been struggling with competitive games, were now succeeding because the humans had made it cooperative instead of aggressive. Look at that, Ariam said, pointing to the scene outside. The human children saw that their alien friends couldn't play the competitive version, so they modified the game to include everyone. That's the real purpose of human play, learning to make the group stronger. Tail watched as Jiwon Park helped a young Zentorian child reach a flag that was placed too high. Instead of competing against each other, the mixed group of human and alien children were working together to overcome challenges. But even this cooperative version required tactical thinking, coordinated movement, and strategic planning. The alien children were learning military-style teamwork while having fun. I'm beginning to see the problem, Tail said slowly. Human games always involve some level of tactical thinking, even when they're designed to be peaceful and inclusive. That's because tactics and cooperation are the same thing for humans, Dr. Kang explained. We can't separate the two. Human children learn to work together by learning to think strategically. Young-ho closed his datapad and prepared to leave. Dr. Voss, can I ask you something? What would happen if the Academy tried to stop human children from playing these games? Tail considered the question. They would be forced to participate in quieter activities, like the other species. And what would that teach them? It would teach them... Tail paused, realizing the implications. The Galactic Council chamber on Station Omega-7 had never seen such tension. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive hall, all summoned for an emergency session about the human situation at the Academy. Ambassador Hyunwoo Sato sat in the human delegation section, trying to remain calm while alien voices filled the chamber with worried discussions. He had received the emergency call 3 days ago and traveled immediately from Earth. Now he wished he had brought more support. Supreme Chancellor Vexitar, a towering Valdorian with crystalline skin, called for order. Her telepathic voice, reached every mind in the chamber simultaneously, creating an eerie silence. We gather today to address disturbing discoveries about human educational practices, she announced. Evidence suggests that human children receive military conditioning disguised as recreational activities. This may constitute a violation of the Galactic Peace Accords. Ambassador Sato stood up slowly. Your Honor, I request permission to address these accusations directly. Permission granted, Ambassador. However, you will first hear testimony from Academy staff and witness demonstrations of the behaviors in question. Dr. Tail Voss approached the central platform, carrying data files and video recordings. The Zentorian scientist looked nervous but determined as he began his presentation. Honored delegates, I have spent 2 weeks studying human children's activities at Galactic Academy. What I discovered challenges our understanding of human peaceful intentions. The chamber's holographic displays showed video footage of human children playing various games. To the alien observers, every activity looked like military training. The systematic team formations, the tactical thinking, the coordination under pressure, it all appeared designed to create child soldiers. These children demonstrate advanced combat skills without formal training, Dr. Tail continued. They naturally organize into command structures, develop battlefield tactics, and show proficiency with simulated weapons. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. The Croylian delegate, a massive creature with 6 arms, spoke up. Are we witnessing the creation of a human military force composed of children? Ambassador Sato felt his heart racing. This was going badly. Your Honor, these are normal childhood games that promote health and friendship. Every human culture has similar activities. That makes it worse, declared the Vorthak representative. If all human children receive this training, then humanity is creating a species-wide military capability. Supreme Chancellor Vextar raised her hand for silence. We will now hear expert testimony. Captain Yunbi Nero of the Human Defense Corps has been brought here to explain the relationship between childhood activities and military readiness. Captain Nero approached the platform in her dress uniform, her bearing straight and professional. She had spent the journey to the station preparing for this moment, knowing that her words could determine humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. Honored delegates, she began, I am here to provide context about human development and military training. It is true that human childhood activities develop skills useful in military applications. However, this is not unique to humans. She activated her own holographic display, showing comparative data from different species. Zentorian meditation develops mental discipline essential for their strategic planning. Croylian puzzle solving creates the analytical skills needed for their engineering core. Valdorian singing practice enhances the telepathic coordination used by their peacekeeping forces. The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. They hadn't expected this comparison. The difference, Captain Nero continued, is that human skills appear more obviously military in nature. But I want to demonstrate something important about these skills. She gestured to the chamber's main screen. We have prepared a tactical simulation. I request permission to bring in one of the human children to participate. Supreme Chancellor Vexatar consulted with other council members before nodding. Permission granted, but under strict supervision. Minutes later, 10-year-old Jihoon Lee entered the chamber with his teacher, Ms. Soman Lee. The boy looked small and nervous in the massive hall filled with alien beings, but he walked with quiet confidence. Jihoon, Captain Nero said gently, we're going to play a strategy game. You'll work with a team of adult Croylian strategists to solve a problem. Is that okay? Ji-hoon nodded, though he didn't fully understand why so many important people were watching him play a game. The tactical simulation appeared on the chamber's displays. It showed a rescue scenario where civilian populations needed to be evacuated from a disaster zone while avoiding dangerous areas and optimizing resource usage. Captain Nero explained the rules to both Ji-hoon and the team of 3 adult Croylian specialists who were renowned for their strategic abilities. The Croylians had years of training and experience in complex problem-solving. You have 30 minutes to develop an evacuation plan, Captain Nero announced. Begin. The adult Croylians immediately began analyzing the data, calculating optimal routes and resource allocation. They worked methodically, using advanced mathematical formulas and logical frameworks. Ji-hoon looked at the display for a few moments, then started moving pieces around intuitively. He divided the evacuation zone into sections, assigned teams to each area, and created escape routes that avoided the danger zones. "Why did you choose that path?" asked one of the Croylian strategists, pointing to Ji-hoon's route selection. "Because the scared people will run toward the light," Ji-hoon said simply. "If we put lights along the safe paths, they'll follow them automatically. And if we put teams here and here," he pointed to specific locations, "they can help anyone who gets lost or hurt." The Croylian strategists stared at the boy's plan. He had solved the problem in 5 minutes using psychological insights they hadn't considered. His solution was simpler, more effective, and more compassionate than their mathematical approach. "The child has outperformed trained adults," whispered Dr. Kelvin to his colleagues. But Captain Nero wasn't finished with her demonstration. "Ji-hoon, now I want you to modify the plan. Instead of evacuating people, imagine you're trying to defeat an enemy army in this same area." The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood that this was the real test. Could the human child's tactical abilities be used for aggressive purposes? Ji-hoon studied the display again. But this time his expression changed. He looked confused and uncomfortable. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he said quietly. "It's just a game," Captain Nero encouraged. "Pretend they're not real people." Ji-hoon shook his head. "But if I'm trying to hurt them, then I need to think differently. I need to be mean instead of helpful." He looked up at Captain Nero with troubled eyes. "Why would I want to practice being mean?" The simplicity of his question hit the chamber like a shockwave. Here was a child who could outthink trained military strategists, but who instinctively rejected using those skills for harmful purposes. "Can you do it anyway?" asked Ambassador Sato gently. "Just for the demonstration?" Ji-hoon considered this request seriously. After a long pause, he began moving pieces on the display, but his movements were hesitant and uncertain. The tactical plan he created was functional, but lacked the intuitive brilliance of his evacuation strategy. "This feels wrong," Ji-hoon said when he finished. "When I tried to help people, the answers came easily. When I tried to hurt them, it was much harder to think clearly." Captain Nero looked at the alien delegates. "This demonstrates the fundamental nature of human tactical thinking. We are most effective when we're protecting others, least effective when we're trying to harm innocents." Dr. Tail Voss stood up from his observation seat. "But Captain Nero, the child still created a functional attack plan. The capability exists, regardless of his preferences." "You're correct," Captain Nero agreed. "Humans do have the capability for tactical thinking, but observe what happens when we change the scenario again." She modified the simulation to show enemy forces threatening civilian populations. "Ji-hoon, now the bad guys are trying to hurt innocent people. Can you stop them? Jihoon's entire demeanor changed. His hesitation disappeared, replaced by focused intensity. He quickly developed a sophisticated defensive strategy that used the terrain to protect civilians while neutralizing threats. His plan was brilliant, decisive, and executed with the same intuitive skill he had shown during the evacuation exercise. When humans believe they're protecting others, Captain Nero explained to the chamber, their tactical abilities reach maximum effectiveness. This is what human childhood games actually teach, not aggression, but protective instincts. Supreme. Chancellor Vextar had been silent throughout the demonstration, but now she leaned forward with interest. Captain Nero, are you suggesting that human military effectiveness is tied to defensive rather than offensive motivations? Exactly, Your Honor. Human tactical skills evolved for group survival and protection of the community. We function best when we're defending something we care about. Ambassador Sato felt a glimmer of hope. The demonstration was showing human nature in a more positive light than the original accusations had suggested. But the Vorthak delegate raised a troubling question. What happens when humans believe their aggression is justified? What if they convince themselves that offensive actions are actually defensive? The Galactic Council chamber remained tense as delegates debated humanity's fate. Some species called for restrictions on human military development, while others worried about the implications of limiting any species' natural evolution. Elder. Borumkel entered the chamber quietly, her presence immediately noticed by the human delegation. At 93 years old, she was the most respected human philosopher in the galaxy, known for her work on interspecies ethics and peaceful coexistence. Supreme Chancellor Vexitar recognized her immediately. Elder Kell, we did not expect you to attend this session. Your Honor, Elder Kell said in her soft but clear voice, when a species faces judgment for the behavior of its children, wisdom suggests that experience should inform the discussion. She moved slowly to the central platform, carrying a simple wooden walking stick that seemed ancient compared to the high-tech environment around her. I have lived through humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, she began. I was a child when we discovered we were not alone in the universe. I remember the fear, the wonder, and the hope of those early days. The chamber fell silent as delegates listened to the elderly human's words. You are debating whether human children's games represent a threat to galactic peace. But you are asking the wrong question. The question you should ask is, what do these games teach human children about their relationship to others? Elder Kell gestured toward the chamber's display screens. You have seen videos of human children playing. You have witnessed their tactical abilities. But have you seen what happens when those same children encounter someone who needs help? She activated her own holographic display, showing footage from the Academy's recreation areas. The scenes were different from the military-style games that had worried the Council. This is Si-Hyun Oh, an 8-year-old human child, Elder Kell said, pointing to a small boy on the screen. Watch what happens when he notices that alien children are having difficulty participating in human games. The footage showed Si-Hyun teaching a group of young Zentorians how to play a modified version of tag. Instead of the fast-paced, competitive game that humans usually played, Si-Hyun had slowed down the rules and created team variations that allowed the Zentorian children to use their natural mental abilities rather than physical speed. The human child recognized that his alien friends had different strengths, Elder Kell explained. He adapted the game to include everyone, making the entire group stronger rather than establishing human dominance. She switched to another scene, showing Jiwon Park and her friends playing with Croylian children. The humans had invented a new game that combined human physical activities with Croylian puzzle-solving skills, creating something that challenged both species in positive ways. These children demonstrate the true purpose of human tactical thinking, Elder Kell continued. They use their abilities to build bridges, not walls. They adapt their strategies to include others, not exclude them. Dr. Tail Voss stood up from his observation seat. Elder Kell, with respect, these examples don't address our concerns about human military capabilities. The children may be friendly now, but what happens when they become adults with access to advanced weapons? Elder Kell smiled gently at the Zentorian scientist. Dr. Voss, you have been observing human children for weeks. In all that time, have you seen any evidence that competitive games make human children more selfish or more aggressive toward their friends? Tail considered the question carefully. No, he admitted. If anything, the children who excel at competitive games seem more likely to help others and include newcomers in their activities. Because that is what these games actually teach, Elder Kell said. Human children learn to compete intensely and then immediately return to cooperation. They learn that today's opponent can be tomorrow's teammate. They learn to respect skilled adversaries and help weaker players improve. Captain Yunbi Nero requested permission to speak. Elder Kell, can you address the concern that human protective instincts might be manipulated for aggressive purposes? An important question, Captain. Elder Kell paused thoughtfully. Human history includes examples of manipulation and misdirected aggression. We are not perfect, but consider this. The same childhood games that develop our tactical abilities also teach us to recognize genuine threats versus manufactured ones. She displayed historical data on human conflicts. Humans who were raised with healthy play experiences consistently showed better judgment about when force was necessary and when peaceful solutions were possible. Children who were denied these experiences were more likely to resort to unnecessary violence. The Vorthak delegate raised his massive form. Elder Kell, how can the galaxy trust that humans will use their abilities responsibly? The same way you trust any species, she replied simply. By observing our actions over time and judging us by our behavior, not our capabilities. She gestured to the mixed group of human and alien children who had been brought to the chamber for the final demonstration. These children have been playing together for the past week under careful supervision. I propose we let them show you what they have learned. Supreme Chancellor Vextar agreed to the demonstration. The children were given a complex problem to solve. They needed to design an emergency response system for a space station that housed multiple species with different needs and abilities. What happened next surprised even Elder Kell. Si-hyun. Oh immediately took on the role of coordinator, but instead of giving orders like a human military leader, he asked each alien child to explain their species' special abilities and needs. The young Zentorians contributed mental communication networks. The Croylian children designed adaptive technologies. The Valdorian youngsters created harmony protocols that would keep everyone calm during emergencies. But it was how the human children facilitated this cooperation that amazed the adult observers. They naturally translated between different types of thinking, helping species understand each other's contributions. They identified potential conflicts and created compromise solutions. They ensured that every species' strengths were utilized, while protecting everyone's weaknesses. The human children are acting as universal coordinators, observed Dr. Kelvin with surprise. They're making the entire group more effective than any single species could be alone. Elder Kell nodded. This is what human tactical thinking actually produces when properly developed. Not soldiers, but bridge builders. Not conquerors, but protectors of diversity. The children's emergency response plan was sophisticated and comprehensive, but more importantly, it was inclusive. Every species would be safer because the human children had learned to think tactically about protection rather than domination. As the demonstration concluded, Elder Kell addressed the council one final time. You have been afraid that human children learn to fight. But what they actually learn is to fight for something, for their friends, for their community, for those who cannot protect themselves. The galaxy doesn't need to fear human tactical abilities. The galaxy needs to understand what those abilities are actually for. Supreme Chancellor Vextar consulted with the other council members through rapid telepathic communication. After several minutes of discussion, she announced the council's decision. The Galactic Council has reached a conclusion regarding human educational practices. While human children do develop tactical abilities through recreational activities, the evidence suggests these skills serve constructive rather than destructive purposes. Ambassador Sato felt relief flooding through him. Therefore, the Chancellor continued, we propose the implementation of the Human Recess Protocol as an optional educational program throughout the Academy system. Species that wish to participate may adapt these activities to develop improved cooperation and problem-solving abilities. Dr. Tail Voss looked shocked. Your Honor, are you suggesting that other species should adopt human games? We are suggesting that human children have demonstrated something valuable about learning through structured competition and cooperative challenge. This approach appears to build character traits that benefit not just individuals, but entire communities. Elder Kell smiled as she watched the alien delegates discussing the new protocol with interest rather than fear. The Zentorian children had already expressed enthusiasm about learning human games, and several adult species were curious about whether these activities might benefit their own young. There is one condition, Supreme Chancellor Vextar added. Human educators must be involved in implementing these programs to ensure they maintain their constructive nature. We want to learn from human methods, not create pale imitations that miss the essential elements. Ms. Soman Lee, who had been silent throughout most of the proceedings, finally spoke up. The Human Education Department accepts this responsibility. We will work with each species to adapt activities that respect their natural abilities while building the cooperative skills that seem to emerge from structured play. As the council session ended, representatives from different species approached the human delegation with questions about implementing playground activities for their own children. The fear that had dominated the chamber hours earlier had transformed into curiosity and hope. Si Yun-Oh and Ji-Won Park were already making plans with their alien friends for new games.